or privately.
Michael, now you've written books. Who has anybody ever funded your books?
I can tell you that the only people that when I put my book Final Judgment together, it was originally published by Liberty Lobby, and it barely got published. It wouldn't have gotten published if I wouldn't have pushed it myself. There were people on the staff there who were working to prevent the book from getting published. So, no, it's just little old me, and in the old days Liberty Lobby, now American Free Press.
Okay, good. We're going to be back 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
John is in the basement mixing up the medicine. I'm on the pavement thinking about the government. The man in a trench coat, badge I've laid off, says he's got a bad cough, wants to get it paid off. Look out, kid, it's something you did. God knows when.
Okay, back again on the Investigative Journal. And, I've got one more question, but before I do that, I don't want to run out of time. I am going to get to the callers, and we got a lot of them, so we're going to get to them. But I do want our two guests, first we'll start with Michael. Can you, because I know our listeners may want to get all these books, look into them, make their own minds up, and that's what this is all about. Michael, how can our listeners get a hold of your, I think it's 3 books now, correct?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
How can they get a hold of this?
Well, they can, on the Internet, they can go to AmericanFreePress.net, AmericanFreePress.net, and they can order them there, or they can call American Free Press at the toll-free number at 888-699-NEWS, 888-699-NEWS, and they can order them there.
And Eric, how can we get a hold of your books?
Okay, the first one's out of print. Second one, I really can't offer it. The third one the VA3 should be available by mid-June or the 1st of July. I'm working towards that deadline real hard.
Okay, and I've got one last question. Then I'll get to callers, and we're going to save about 4 or 5 minutes at the end for each of our guests to make a final statement. And let me ask this question. And this one, kind of not a personal question, but just a journalistic, I guess, aside and a question in there somewhere. When I first started covering stories in the mainstream media, I was censored on stories that had to do with both Jews and both Jesuits and Catholics. And let me tell you how. I used to cover stories in Rome. I used to write stories in different newspapers in America. And mostly when I was overseas, these stories never saw the light of day. They don't see the light of day now, and I doubt if any of these discussions that we have today would ever get on a channel in the mainstream, and I don't think any of my two guests would disagree with me. However, when we get into the alternative press, and I've decided to do that, basically, to get at the truth, as we're doing today. I have been one of the few to tackle both these issues. Whether people agree or not, the people that I have written about have opinions, and I still think that each person's opinion counts, and we should, especially when we're undergoing such a crisis in our country, to uncover every stone. What I find, and I want to get both my guests' opinions on this, and maybe Michael, he writes too, Eric, you're out there writing in the alternative press, and get your opinion. When I write about Zionism, I don't get attacked as much. In fact, I can write about it and get a lot of people applauding what I do. When I write about it in the alternative press, I not only get attacked heavily, but many of my stories don't appear a lot of places. And I am wondering, what's going on? Why is that just happening to me? Michael, does it happen? Have you heard this before?
Well, you're talking about when you write about Jesuits.
Well, when I bring people, and let's say when I write about them, I mean, when I just interview somebody who has an opinion about them, I get attacked. And I keep telling people, I'm just writing what they are saying. I'm the journalist, the messenger. Well, they're kind of saying, don't bring the message. But I get attacked. But when I write about a Zionist story, I don't.
Well,
in the alternative press now.
Actually, it's kind of funny because I think it goes both ways, because there are a lot of people in what you might call the alternative press and radio who will not talk, who just strictly will not talk about Zionism whatsoever, because they'd rather blame it on the Illuminati or the Committee of 300 or the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, as far as the issue of...
And let me say that you're very correct when you say that, and I really mean that. You are correct. Go
yeah,
ahead.
Whereas this question now, as far as I'm concerned, as I say, my concern about this issue of the Jesuits is that I know that as far as the Kennedy assassination is concerned, I don't think any semblance of a serious argument can be made that the Jesuits were the masterminds behind the Kennedy assassination. The issue of the Lincoln assassination, I couldn't say because I have not done enough research on that. But on the other hand, I've seen some very convincing research which suggests that there were Zionist Jewish elements behind Lincoln's assassination.
Yeah.
But
well, here's one thing, though, a point
enough.
that if I could bring up to both of you that I don't want this to be, I want this in this interview. In 1867, this is fact, after the Lincoln assassination, America, the U.S., cut off all diplomatic relations with the Vatican. And that story goes deep and deep and deep. We did not reinstitute diplomatic relations with the Vatican until Ronald Reagan. Now, that story, boy, I'll tell you why. What is going on there? There's a lot of things going on. And people say that the reason they cut off relations with the Vatican is because they were hiding some of the hitmen that killed Lincoln. A lot of the history was hidden until it was uncovered in a Quebec house. I've had the guest on my show that wrote the book about that incident, and it is well worth reading about the Lincoln assassination. My question is, everything always changes but remains the same. That's an old adage that I grew up, my grandfather kept telling me that. So I really still think that it's important to research both the Zionist movement and the Vatican affair. But anyway, now I forgot about my question. I guess it was regarding what I was talking about as far as this getting attacked for these kind of stories. And I find it kind of strange. And that's my personal experience. And I'm not saying it's anybody else's, but I just want to go on the record saying that.
I might also add, too, that I failed to bring up was the doctrine of the Pope's temporal power. And as you see the two keys on the papal flag, one represents his supposed spiritual power, and the other is his temporal power. And the temporal power of the Pope says that the Pope has the right to rule the governments of every nation of the world. And this is one of the maxims that the Jesuits work upon, that because of this supposed right to rule every government, they have the right to usurp them all by any means necessary, including third-party Zionists.
Michael, one last comment. I want to get to callers. Go ahead.
Well, I don't think anybody has any doubt in their mind that every religious movement, whether it's the Vatican or whether it's Zionism or whether it's Jehovah's Witnesses, have a desire to rule the world and institute their own religious philosophy. I guess my concern is that there isn't any evidence that the Zionists or that the Vatican orchestrated the Kennedy assassination for the reasons that Mr. Phelps has outlined in his book, and then that raises questions about everything else. But as I say, my focus on the Kennedy assassination has convinced me beyond any doubt that there is no evidence of Jesuit involvement, but that the evidence of Zionist involvement for Zionist motives, not Jesuit motives, is paramount.
Okay, well, let's get to, I got a whole bunch of callers. Marilyn in California, you've been waiting the longest. You're on the Investigative Journal.
Yeah, thanks for this incredible debate. I got a statement and then a couple of questions for each man. Throughout history, the Catholic Church has known to be, they call themselves the one true church, and they also have persecuted and killed millions of Christians who refuse to bow the knee to the Pope and refute the Word of God. I'd like to ask each man, this debate at its core appears to me to be a Catholic worldview versus a Christian worldview. Could each of you comment on that?
Who'd like to go first?
I'll let Eric go.
Go ahead, Eric.
Okay. I would say that you're correct as far as I'm not sure what your religious faith is, Michael, but my position is that the Bible is the final authority of faith and practice. Therefore, it's historically Protestant, historically Christian, historically Baptist, and a Calvinist in my position of the persuasion. And therefore, it's the same Hegelian dialectic of the Reformation versus the Counter-Reformation that has continued to this day, that the doctrines of the Reformation, an open Bible, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, versus the Jesuit orders, Counter-Reformation, Council of Trent, condemning freedom of conscience, condemning freedom of speech, freedom of the press in the fourth session of the